Question number 3, what do you think is the best medium for chicken coop floors? And to be fair, I don't actually know if this person asking is doing a mobile chicken coop or a stationary coop. So we'll kind of talk about those separately. On a mobile coop option, I don't use anything for the floor because I just let the manure fertilize and then I move the chicken tractor forward. For my roosting and my nesting area, I use a mesh cloth, like the hardware mesh, so that way the poop can actually go down through it, or I can just kind of rough it up with a brush or a broom and it'll just kind of crumble underneath and and go right back into the soil. So that's really the only thing that I do for the coop floors and the chicken tractors that are mobile. Now, if it's stationary, I personally like good old sand because it's gonna leach out as much of the nitrates and the nitrites as possible, which means you get less ammonia. The problem when you have like a clay-based soil, if you have a lot of lime or limestone in your soil, is it builds up nitrates and you get that nasty ammonia smell, you get a hard pan, it's disgusting. So in those cases, I would say bring in play sand or contractor sand, the cheapest sharp sand that you can buy. And then I literally would use a kitty litter scoop because you can even use a stall cleaner because it'll scoop up and then sift out the poop and the manure. And then you can put that in a separate bucket or container, throw it on a compost pile, and then you're left basically with sand that's acting as kitty litter. Do not use kitty litter in there because that will turn into clay. And there's a lot of like nasty stuff in kitty litter that's a whole other conversation. So that's probably what I would say for the chicken coop floors. Now, when it comes to the winter months, I typically use, if you're in a colder climate, I use the deep bed method. So instead of like changing it all the time, as soon as I see manure, I add a leaflet of straw, and then I let it build up for a few days. Then I add another leaf of straw, let it build up for a few days. And then all winter long, that's growing. It actually composts there in place and it really increases the thermal temperature inside of the chicken coops in the winter. And then in the springtime, then I remove that deep bedding method and then I can use it in the food forest or put it on the compost pile or whatever. So I use the deep bedding method in the winter months. Is primarily what I would use. Now, to go along with that question, I know this is not what the person is asking. I would also strongly recommend not using DE dry in the chicken coop or in the chicken run. Diatomaceous earth or DE has razor sharp edges. I mean, it is a fossilized crustacean that when the animals breathe it in, it thrashes their lungs, the lung tissue. It does the same thing as like asbestos does with mesothelioma. So you never want to use DE in the coop or the run. You are just asking and begging for long-term bronchial and lung problems, pneumonia problems, upper respiratory infections with your chickens and your poultry. So DE is something I only use in feed and only when it's a wet feed because that's going to help with the deworming, but it's not going to be breathed in and cause the lung tissue damage.